Hello, my dear students. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangatan's online classes. Students, we are into the second session of our chapter of evolution. And as I discussed yesterday, that total we will be having 5 sessions, and we are now into the second session of the total 5 sessions. And today's topic will be the discussion on evidences of evolution, adaptive radiation, and natural selection. Right. Now, when we talk about evidences of evolution, now if you just go back to the first session where we have learnt about various theories that put forward for the origin of life and life forms. But how to prove that the origin of life has occurred on Earth? Evolution has occurred on Earth. Organic evolution has taken place on Earth. Now, for that, we need some evidences. So, evidences are very important and play a vital role in proving anything, right? So, therefore, we need to have certain evidences of evolution, and we will also able to show how adaptive radiation has occurred, and of course, we will look into certain very interesting aspects on natural selection. Right. So these will be discussed in this topic of our today's session. Now, what are the learning units in this chapter? The first one, origin of life and life forms. Okay, that we have discussed in session number 1, and this session will be dealing with the evidences of evolution, adaptive radiation, and natural selection. Right. Then we have the biological evolution, mechanism of evolution, and Hardy-Weinberg principle, and evolution, a brief account, and origin and evolution of man. Now, what are the learning objectives, learning outcome that we will be learned at the end of this session? At the end of this session, you will be able to know there are evidences of evolution which come from different quarters or different areas, right? Different quarters and different areas, such as paleontological evidences, comparative anatomy and morphology, biochemical evidences, and other evidences that we will look into one by one, right? And we'll also understand how these evidences prove the evolution of life forms. Just as I said, right, evidences play a very vital role in proving anything. So therefore, we also, in order to prove that evolution has occurred, we need certain evidences. Then we'll also compare how convergent evolution is different from divergent evolution, right? Now here we are discussing two important terms, convergent evolution and divergent evolution. What is convergent evolution? Where all of them, they converge at one single point, and the opposite is the divergent evolution, where they just go to different areas, and therefore we say it is divergent evolution. That is in terms of evolution. And also to understand that how industrial melanism helps in survival of the fittest species. So we will be explaining you that context with the help of an example, called melanized moth, Biston betullaria, and what changes that it has undergone during the course of evolution, and therefore that we will also discuss that. So therefore, that is an interesting aspect of that. Then the process of natural selection, right? How does the natural selection occurs, and how does natural selection occurs in action? So that process also we will be looking into, and also we will see who has put forward the theory of natural selection and what are the various points in the natural selection. Also explaining the adaptive radiation with the help of suitable examples. We'll look into 2 or 3 important examples to show that how adaptive radiation has occurred globally on this planet, and we'll also illustrate diagrammatically the different examples of divergent evolution and convergent evolution. So there are different examples to show how to prove that this is a divergent evolution, and on what basis we will prove that this is a divergent evolution and this is a convergent evolution, right? Now, what previous knowledge you should possess to understand this session, right? So till now you have learned how to prove the process of evolution has occurred, right? This is the very, very important thing. How there are any evidences to support evolution, and if yes, what are they? How these evidences will prove to support the theory of organic evolution or the chemical evolution has occurred, and how these evidences point out to common ancestry. So that is a very very interesting aspect to know that. Okay, children. So in that case, so this plays a very very vital role to understand the sessions. Okay, so let us go into the discussions aspect of our second session. Okay, now let us go to the first and very very important part, paleontological evidences. Now, what is paleontological evidences? Now, how to prove that? Right. Paleontology is nothing but the study of fossils. Right. The study of fossils is known as paleontology. Paleo is nothing but ancient. Onto is individual, and logy means study. Right. So the word has been combined, and now it is known as a paleontological evidences. Now, when you just dig the earth, no, when you just dig the earth, or when paleontologists dig the earth, what do you usually find them? They usually find fossils. Okay, so what are these fossils? The fossils are the remains of hard parts of forms found in rocks. They are impressions. Fossils are impressions that you can see under the sedimentary rocks. Okay, usually fossils are found under the sedimentary rocks. Okay, so when paleontologists find out the fossils and when they just dig deep into the earth, so what did they find? The study of fossils in different sedimentary layers indicate the geological period in which they existed. Right, so what did they found? So as they dig deeper and deeper, they found the fossils to be more ancient. Right, as they dig deeper and deeper, they found the fossils to be more ancient in the sense, the deeper the fossil, the ancient the fossil is. What is that? The deeper the fossil is, the ancient the fossil is. So the deeper the fossils found, the early they have existed. So when you go deep and deep into the layers of sedimentary rocks, etc., so you will find the fossils and they are more ancient one. Okay, and the fossils which are formed on the surface of the earth, they are what you call more recent. They are more recent. So as you can see in this particular diagram, where we have given you the different layers of the what you call sedimentary earth. So you can find here the lowermost layer of earth, where we have find the trilobites existing, then followed by fishes, then amphibians, the dinosaurs and mammals. Okay, so this slide helps us to understand about the paleontological evidences. Now, if these paleontological evidences, what do they prove? They prove that yes, in the evolution has occurred on this planet. Okay, there has been a gradual occurrence of, or the appearance of life forms on earth. Right, and if the life forms did not appear gradually or slowly, then why the fossils are of different what you call time? They should be of the same time when you dig into it. Okay, so that means that the layers that we found deep into the earth or sedimentary layers, they are the oldest or ancient fossils that we find. Okay, children, so these evidences, the first evidences is paleontological evidences. I repeat, paleontological evidences are proving a lot to us. And now this is not what you call evidences that what we gather from the every part of the earth, every part of the globe, is not what you call ends up. No, it's a continuous process. No, so every day now in the news or in the newspapers, we just hear about the new fossils being discovered from anywhere part of the globe, anywhere part of the earth. Right. So these evidences, the scientists keep on tracking them. Scientists keep on excavating them to find the exactly the fossils. And you all know how to calculate the age of the fossils. So there is a method called carbon dating method, by which we can find out the age of the fossils. Right, children? Now let us go to the another interesting aspect called as a morphological and comparative anatomical evidences. Okay, morphological and comparative. What is morphology? The study of external features of an organism is said to be called morphology. Right, and what is anatomy? The internal structure, the details of an organism, we say it is anatomy. Okay, otherwise called internal morphology as well. Okay, now how do we support the theory of what we call the morphological and comparative anatomical evidences to prove that there is indeed evolution has occurred on this planet? Okay, now look at this figure, the figure that is in front of you. Okay, Now, what does this figure help us to understand? Now, look at that. It is a forelimb of what you call humans, right? Then the second one, dog. The third one is pig and the sheep, and the fifth one is the horse. Okay. Now, what is common among all these parts? Okay. Look at the common, or at least uniformity in them. Now, look at that. Look at the scapula of all these four limbs of that. Now, all these four limbs of different mammals, they have a common basic plan and structure. They have a common basic plan and structure. Okay, but the functions are different for them, isn't it? So, organs that have a common basic plan, right? All organs that have a common basic plan and structure and origin, but performing different functions, okay, we say these are homologous organs. Homo means same. So, what do you call? Homo means same. So, homologous organs may be defined as organs that have similar basic plan and structure, but perform different functions. Now, anatomically, okay, they are similar because they are actually performing different functions, but anatomically they are similar. Okay, so such type of evolution that actually is displayed by homologous organs, we say it is called divergent evolution. What is it called? Divergent evolution. So divergent evolution is nothing but about homologous organ. Now, how to remember this? A very simple technique is there. Okay, you often have come across HD camera, HD calling, and also HD pictures. Similarly, HD. So for us, H means homologous organ and D means divergent evolution. So always remember, HD is nothing but homologous organs always portray, always show divergent evolution. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, what does it mean? It means that organs that have a similar basic plan and structure, and then there will be what you call anatomically they are different. Okay, so because of different structures, okay, so they may be performing different functions. Okay, different functions. So therefore we say, so they are homologously similar. Okay, but in the case, what do you call, in that sense they are performing different functions because it depends upon the habitat of such organisms where they live. Now, other examples that we can give here is about the vertebrate hearts, isn't it? Look at the hearts of all the vertebrates. If you have studied, and you can even browse from internet, the limbs, the brains in animals. Okay, let us give one more example in the case of plants. Okay, and that is the thorns and tendrils of bougainvillea and cucurbita in plants. Okay, so if you look at the thorns in the case of bougainvillea and tendrils in the case of cucurbita, okay, so usually they arise in the same what do you call, structurally they are similar. Origin is similar, but what is not similar? The functions are not similar, right? So what is the function of thorns then? So thorns, they help in protection from the grazing animals. Okay, so since that has got thorns, so usually grazing animals avoid these plants, avoid eating bougainvillea. And what about the tendrils in cucurbita? The tendrils will be helping in climbing. Okay, tendrils are spring-like structures that you are already studied in class 10th. So therefore they will be helping in the plants to what you call climb. So in that sense, the thorns of bougainvillea and the tendrils of what you call cucurbita also are homologous to each other. Now let us go to another interesting aspect. Now here you can find one more diagram regarding the wings of the different animals. Okay, let us see what are they. The different animals, we have the wings of insect here. Okay, A diagram is wings of insect, and B is a wing of a pterodactyl, right? And then we have the wing of a bird, and lastly we have a wing of a bat. Now what is a common and what is uniformity in all these four structures? The common and the uniformity in these four structures is all are performing similar functions. So functions are same. Okay, the functions are same. They help in flying, but okay, but their origin, their structure is not same. So what do we call such organs where the function is similar, right? Okay, so organs that do not have a common basic plan and origin, that do not have a common basic plan or origin but perform similar function, and such are called as what you call analogous organs. What are they called? Analogous organs. And usually analogous organs, what do they portray? What do they display? What do they show? They show convergent evolutions. They show convergent evolution. Okay, the wing of an insect, okay, you cannot compare the wing of an insect with the wing of a bird. Okay, so function wise it is similar. The wing of an insect also helps to the organism to fly, like in the case of a bird. But if you look at the anatomical part of it, so there's both are not same. Okay, so as in the case of birds, the wings are supported by strong wing muscles, the tissues are there. Okay, but in the case of insects, there's only an external what you call part of an exoskeleton that will be helping the organisms to use that. Okay, children, so this also explains that the evidences that how morphological and comparative anatomical evidences will be helping us to support what you call organic evolution, okay, that has taken place in the world. Now next evidences that we'll go into is the biochemical evidences. Okay, we know all the bodies of living organisms are made up of cells, exactly. And what do the cells contain? The cells contain some non-living components, right? So it contains the genetic material, or it may contain the proteins or RNA or whatever it may be, the genetic material. Okay, so what is the biochemical evidence, and how biochemical evidences help us to point a common ancestry? Okay, now what is that? The similarity of proteins and genes performing a common given function among diverse organisms gives clues to common ancestry. Okay, so if you take the what you call the genetic code, the properties of the genetic code, okay, or it may be anything else, you will find that in all these organisms, right from bacteria to other eukaryotic organisms, the genes and the proteins that will be coding, okay, having a common given function, they'll be coding for a common proteins. Okay, so in that sense, if there is a common and if there is a uniformity in coding such things, then why do we should not call this as not having pointing to a common ancestry? So there shall be a common ancestry indicating that, because the similarity of proteins and genes performing a common given function among diverse organisms. So organisms are diverse. The prokaryotes are different. The bacteria belongs to prokaryotes, but we are all eukaryotic cell. So in spite of that difference and despite of that diversity, the commonness, the uniformity is that the genes, they code for a common given function. They code for proteins, and that coding is same in both the case of prokaryotic cell as well as in the case of eukaryotic cells. And what else is similar? Look at that. The metabolic products in organisms, that is the metabolism that is going on into the cells, the metabolism going on to the cells, the using of nutrients from outside, using the nutrients to build up the materials and generating the waste materials, all these materials are similar. Okay, all these, every living organism has to use certain nutrients to carry out the body functions, to carry out body activities. So that is also similar in all these organisms. So when we talk about, in spite of this diversity, there is a uniformity, there is a commonness and all. So that points to certain things that yes, indeed, the organic evolution has taken place in this world. Okay, children. Now let us go to the next interesting aspect called adaptive melanism or industrial melanism. Okay, now if you look at this figure, okay, in this figure, let us have a look at the figure first. Okay, now this is a figure of 7.4 showing the two different types of moths here. Okay, the winged moth and the dark moths. Okay, you can see the winged moth, which is called the melanized, the dark one is called the melanized one, and on a tree trunk. Okay, first in an unpolluted area, and second one in the case of a polluted area. Okay, now there is certain difference in both of them. Okay, let us see what are that. Now in England, okay, in England, it was noted that before industrial revolution, the number of white winged moths was more than that of dark winged moths. Yeah, dark melanized moths. Okay, so the scientific name of this moth is Biston betularia. Okay, so what was observation? it was observed that before industrial revolution, the tree trunks were covered with more number of white winged moths than compared to the dark winged moths. Okay, now then after the industrialization, there something has changed. Something has changed. Now, what is the changed? The changes are there. You can see the diagram as well. The tree trunk are becoming dark, right? The tree trunks are become dark, and as a result, because of that, the melanized moths are not be able to seen very clearly. But look at the white winged moths; they are more visible. They are more visible. So, what had happened after the industrial revolution, and how do we talk about this as a natural selection? Okay, so after industrial revolution, there were more number of dark melanized moths. Okay, but before industrial revolution, the number of white colored moths were more. But after the industrial revolution, the number gradually decreased and the number of dark winged moths gradually increased. Okay, so what happened in between those two? Right, now in the previous, that is before industrialization, now why was the number of white winged moths were more? Actually, the tree trunks at that time was covered by lichens. The tree trunks at that time were covered by lichens. That is before industrial revolution. Okay, so as a result, now lichens are a very very important organism, as they are the indicators of pollution, right? So you don't find lichens in those areas where the areas are highly polluted. So if you find lichens on a tree trunk in an area, so you can simply say that this area is not polluted. It is not polluted. So these are the pollution indicators. So as a result, the number of winged moths were more, right? And what happened? So because the background of what you call the winged moth, that is the tree trunks were very very light. So the white moth, okay, it was camouflaged. The white winged moth was camouflaged in the sense it could not be easily seen by the predators, right? So moths are eaten by birds. Okay, so these birds could not spot the white winged moths, could not white winged moths, because the white winged moths were camouflaged in the background, but they could seen the dark melanized moths very easily. Okay, so what happened at the time? The birds came and they started eating more and more number of what you call the dark winged moths. And because of the dark winged moths, the population of dark winged moths gradually decreased, and the population of white winged moths gradually increased. And therefore in the sense we say the population of white winged moth increased in number. Okay, now after industrialization, what happened? A lot of changes have occurred. Okay, so just opposite of the first instance, we say that the population of white winged moths gradually, okay, decreased, and the population of dark winged moths gradually increased. Okay, so what could have happened here? Okay, what could have happened here? Now, after the industrial revolution, the soot that which was released from the chimneys of the industries gradually settled onto the tree trunks, right? So as the tree trunks were settled by the soot, okay, from the industries, they killed lichens. And when the lichens were killed, what happened? These actually, the white winged moths, okay, they could hardly be, that is, they could be easily seen by the predators, by the birds, and the advantage was for the dark melanized moths. The advantage was for the dark melanized moths. So as a result, they could not be seen by the predators, and as a result, the population of white peppered moth or white moth gradually decreased, and the population of dark melanized moth increased. Now, what these examples help us to understand? It understands the what you call industrial melanism. Okay, so nature in the first, that is natural selection, has acted here, and it was the natural selection in action. Okay, in the first instance, before industrial revolution, what happened? the population, the same nature has given an advantage, a survival advantage to the white peppered moth, the white winged moth, but after industrialization, the same advantage was given to the dark melanized moth. Okay, children, so therefore this, in this way, the natural selection occurs in action. Okay, so nature selects the best, which is the what you call survival of the fittest, that is what we say according to Darwin. Okay, and similarly the herbicide and pesticide resistant plants and animals and antibiotic resistant bacteria are some of the evidences that also point towards evolution. Okay, so if we look at that today, in our normal work, we are using large number of herbicides and pesticides. Okay, and among the there is the disease resistant plants and also antibiotic resistant bacteria. So it may be because of that. Okay, if we are using some more of these what you call antibiotics, tomorrow also they will be resistant to such antibiotics, that what we come to know. Okay, now another examples for the natural selection in action is actually given by namely adaptive radiation. Okay, adaptive radiation is a kind of a natural selection where organisms get radiated to different places, to different areas, and they get adapted to such conditions, and they get adapted to certain conditions. Okay, now we know about Charles Darwin, isn't it? So Charles Darwin, on his voyage along the world in a ship, namely HMS Beagle. Now when he landed on Galapagos Islands, so he observed there some birds. Okay, and these birds were later be called as Darwin's finches. Darwin's finches. Okay, now what about these Darwin's finches, and why these finches attracted Darwin? Okay, now when he looked at the beak of different birds, right, so he observed that the body of these birds were almost all similar except in the structure of beak. Okay, so what could have happened? So initially, according to him, what he says, that initially all the birds are originated from a common ancestor. Okay, and the common ancestor might be of a seed eating bird, seed eating parent. Okay, but why the beaks are changed? It is because initially they were all eating seeds, but because of getting radiated to new areas, getting radiated to new places, so what could have been found there? Okay, so whatever the food available on to that particular land or area or habitat, so they were eating that kind of food. So some ate fruits and some ate seeds, some they ate insects, and like that. So because of that, the structure of the beak has undergone a gradual change. Okay, so initially they were only one species, but now they have different species, right? So they are different species. So you can see here the beaks of the different finches here. Look at the body shape. So there's almost a similarity in the case of body shape, but if you look at the beak structure, you're not going to find the same beak structure in all these birds. So this indicates that these birds initially they were belong to the common seed-eating parent, seed-eating bird. But later on, what happened? Because of the changes, they might have gone to different areas, get adapted radially, and because of that, they have been settled there, and as a result, what they've been forced to eat whatever the food was available onto that particular habitat. Okay, so it is a evolutionary process in which different species, starting from a common point, right, in a geographical area, radiate to other geographical areas. Okay, and examples we have here is about the Darwin's finches, and also we talk about as Australian marsupials. Okay, so we also have one more example of Australian marsupials. This figure also, that is 7.6, is there in your textbook. Have a look at these. Okay, so you can see today in Australia we have different what you call marsupials. Now, isn't it? Kangaroo, wombat, bandicoot, koala, marsupial, mole, then super sugar glider and Tasmanian wolf, tiger cat, banded anteater, marsupial rat. Now, what scientists and evolutionary biologists believe that all they have come from a common ancestor. Okay, and because of getting radiated to new places, new areas, they have been confined to those areas, but their ancestor is only one. So all have come from a common ancestor. Okay, and because of that we say also as an example of adaptive radiation. So they went to different areas and they were adapted to the conditions that are available in such areas. Right. So for that purpose we say that this also example of adaptive radiation. Now one more example that we see here is the placental mammals and Australian marsupials. Okay. Now look at that. Also if we find, for example, like burrower or anteater or mouse or climber, gliders, cat and wolf. Now look at that. Now the last one. Let us highlight this one. Okay. Now look at the last one, the wolf and the Tasmanian wolf. Okay, look at the similarity. Look at the similarity. If you look very closely, almost all they look very closely and resemble with each other. So in the sense that what it means that they might have a common ancestor, sharing a common ancestor. So indicating that they are adapted radially, and this shows the example of adaptive radiation. Okay, children. Now let us go to the next, another interesting aspect of natural selection. Okay, now natural selection in the one sense which was being put forward by Charles Darwin. Okay, now what according to him, no, there are certain important things that what Darwin says regarding his observations. Okay, now changes in allelic frequency leads to evolution. Okay, alleles, as you know, there is slight form of the same genes, isn't it? So changes in allelic frequency leads to evolution, which was proposed by Charles Darwin. It is the most accepted concept of to account for the changes in the gene pool of the population under selective environmental pressure. Okay, now usually if you look at the Darwin's theory as a whole, right, so he says that it is based on certain points. Okay, what are that points? The first points, it says that there are certain factors which are usually based upon the origin of species, that is the prodigality of reproduction, then the struggle for existence, the survival of the fittest and the variations. Okay, and that leads to the new species of form. So what are the factors? Natural resources are limited while populations are stable in size. All species have inherent ability to produce a large number of offsprings. Individuals of the population differ from one another, characterized by variations. So that is what variations are very important. Changes which are inheritable, and they can even be transferred from parents to offsprings. So they may be inheritable. So changes in genetic composition may result in heritable variations. Individuals with deleterious variations get eliminated. Okay, so organisms possess variations, right? So but which variations are going to help the organism, that will be deciding in course of time. Okay, so that if organism survives with those variations, we say that our variations are useful, and if those variations are not allowing the organism, not helping the organism to survive, we can say that these are the deleterious variations, and that will be helping in eliminating the organism. Okay, so that is will be under the different environmental pressures. Okay, you take in the examples of forest or in a pond, any ecosystem you take. So these are the things that will be always in action. Okay, individuals with advantageous variations are selected. So that's a very important point. What it says, individuals with advantageous variations. Yes, it's a very important thing. So variations, individuals with advantages, and how do organism knows that this is an advantage? So that it will be only known at the time of what you call survival. So at it is able to survive. Okay, it is able to survive, that will be known to the organism that yes, I possess these heritable variation, and these are my advantageous variation that will be helping them to survive. Okay, so they will be selected by nature and their progeny increases in number. So naturally, when they are selected by the nature will allow them to reproduce. So therefore, they will be increasing in number. Okay, in the population concept of variation. So in one sense, that what do we come to know, that this is how nature acts upon the selection of the species. Okay, so this had been taken place since millions of years ago, and because of the result of such natural selection today, we have a very vast diversity of flora and fauna existing on the earth, isn't it? So therefore, in this context, that is what we mean to understand. Okay, children, let us go back into the recapitulation, the summary of the session. Okay, children, now in this session today, we have learned the various evidences of evolution, evidences which have been gathered from different fields or different quarters, such as paleontological, comparative, anatomical evidences, and also biochemical evidences. So these three evidences are very, very important, especially the paleontological and comparative anatomical evidences. Sometimes we may be asked to write the differences between the homologous organs or analogous organs, that is the what you call convergent evolution and divergent evolution. Okay, so remember always HD, that is homologous organs always show divergent evolution, right, and analogous organs always show the convergent evolution. Okay, then industrial melanism in light and dark winged moth, how the what you call industrial melanism has acted upon, and how natural selection in action occurs. Okay, in terms of selecting the individual. So before industrial revolution, it selected the light winged moths, right, and after the industrial revolution, the situation was changed. So the same advantage, the survival advantage, was given to the dark winged moth. So this indicates the industrial. So industrial revolution, isn't it? So industrial melanism. Melanin is a dark pigment that we find in the organisms, and especially the adaptive radiation with reference to Darwin's finches, marsupials of Australia, right, and also the natural selection and its various factors. Okay, children, let us go into the instant assessment. Okay, what do we have to learn about this? Let us see the first question for you. Homologous structures are result of A, convergent evolution, divergent evolution, both convergent and divergent evolution, neither convergent nor divergent evolution. So how to remember this? HD, remember that, isn't it? So HD, so what is D here? D is divergent evolution, exactly correct. Then eyes of octopus and flippers of penguins are also examples of A, analogous organs, homologous organs, both homologous and analogous organs, neither homologous nor analogous organs. So what do you find? No, eyes of octopus and flippers, isn't it? So they are what do you call analogous to each other. The following of the pollution indicators in an area. So what are the pollution indicators in an area? Algae, fungi, lichens and bacteria. So the answer that you know very well, isn't it? Now the different beaks in Darwin's finches can be explained by, isn't it? So in Galapagos Islands, when Darwin observed those finches, so he observed that all these birds were having similar size and shape except in terms of their beaks. So he said that it is maybe because of the adaptive radiation. So adaptive radiations which come into existence. So what is that? So we have answers as HD, divergent evolution, analogous, eyes of octopus, flippers of penguins show analogous organs, lichens and adaptive radiation. Okay, children. Now, these are some of the home assignment questions for you. Please do write in your homework notebook and please submit to your biology teacher. Okay, or he and she will be correcting these questions. Okay, so we have given some definitions to you at home. Okay, then the first one, divergent evolution, natural selection, adaptive radiation, and we also given some fill in the blanks to answer those what you call questions. Okay, children, and also you can go back to some further readings. Okay, so we can go for first the book, the textbook of our biology by NCERT, then refer some reference books. You can refer certain books. Okay, good books, good authorized books which are good. Okay, and we have also given some website links where you can go and read online, browse online to understand the topics very well. Now this preparation or presentation has been completely made for academic purpose. there is no any commercial motive behind this, and moreover all these biology textbook, biology exemplar and websites have been used to create this presentation for you. Okay children, so the next topic that we will be going to discuss will be the biological evolution, the process of mechanism of evolution, and also about the process that how Hardy-Weinberg principle help us to understand. Okay children, then this is the presentation by me, right? And these are the people who are behind what you call for the wonderful presentation that you are going through, right? So this is all hard work of this what you call task force. Okay, and thank you very much for watching this, and this is a ZIET Bhubaneswar presentation. Keep watching. Thank you very much.